Spring 2025. It was supposed to be a time of renewal. Instead, it brought absolute devastation across the United States. Tornadoes ripped through the Midwest and South. Wildfires, fierce and fast, burned through towns in Oklahoma and California. And when it was all over, at least 42 people were dead. 42 lives cut short. But here's the thing that'll send a chill down your spine. This all happened after more than 40 official warnings went out. Warnings meant to save lives. Signals that should have made people act. But somehow the system failed. Miserably. This isn't just another extreme weather story. We're digging into a catastrophic breakdown. How, with so many warnings, did so many people still die? What went so wrong between the alert and the action? And are the systems we rely on to keep us safe fundamentally broken? Early 2025. The forecasts weren't good. They all pointed to a rough spring. Meteorologists saw the signs. Conditions were ripe for severe weather. It was a perfect storm of factors, really, putting emergency services on high alert. Now, the U.S. is no stranger to Mother Nature's fury. We've poured a lot of money into fancy warning systems. Think about it. The National Weather Service, FEMA, state and local emergency teams. It's supposed to be this layered defense, all working to spot threats, get warnings out, and tell people what to do. We've got the Integrated Public Alert and Warning System, or IPAWS. That's the tech designed to hit your phone with alerts for your specific area, and it also uses TV, radio, and even those old-school sirens. Plus, there are local notifications and social media campaigns. On paper, it looks like we're set. The plans are there, the tech is cutting edge. The idea is simple: danger's coming, you get a warning, you get to safety. This spring was supposed to show how well it all worked under pressure, especially with our climate getting more aggressive. But instead, it showed some deep, scary cracks in the system. So, between March and May of 2025, the warnings started rolling in. One after another. It was like a constant, grim reminder of the growing danger. More than 40 official alerts went out across 8 states. Tornado watches, actual tornado warnings, red flag warnings for fire danger, evacuation orders, you name it. In the Midwest, states like Missouri, Kansas, and Arkansas saw a string of powerful supercell thunderstorms. The Storm Prediction Center even issued Particularly Dangerous Situation, or PDS, tornado watches. That's a big deal. They don't use that term lightly. Local National Weather Service offices then sent out very specific tornado warnings for targeted areas, often with what experts would say was enough lead time. One weekend alone, over 79 tornadoes reported. Some dropped hail the size of softballs and had winds so strong they just ripped houses off their foundations. Still, in towns right in the path of these monsters, people died. Meanwhile, over in parts of Oklahoma and Texas, it was a tinderbox. Super dry conditions, high winds, just waiting for a spark. Red flag warnings were active for days. And when those wildfires started, they spread terrifyingly fast, burning up hundreds of thousands of acres. Evacuation orders went out. Sometimes it felt like there were hours to get out. Other times, it was a frantic scramble as flames closed in. Then, further west, Southern California was dealing with its own nightmare. After a stretch of intense fire weather warnings, massive wildfires exploded, forcing huge numbers of people to evacuate. And here, things got even worse. Not only were lives lost to the fires, but reports started coming in about failed emergency calls. Communication systems were either overwhelmed or damaged. Some people were trapped, unable to even call for help. You see the pattern here? Across all these disaster areas, the alerts were going off. News channels were breaking in with urgent updates. Phones were buzzing and shrieking. Sirens were wailing. And yet, 42 people lost their lives. There's a quote from a Kentucky governor, after surveying similar devastation in a past event, who said, "You can not only see the destruction, you can feel it." That's exactly how it felt in the spring of 2025. The warnings went out. The destruction came anyway. And the space between those two things? It became a massive, tragic gap, filled with loss and some really tough questions. 42. It sounds like just a number, doesn't it? But behind it are horrifying stories, final moments of pure terror. In Missouri, one family got multiple tornado alerts. They did what they were supposed to do, took shelter in their basement. But the storm just tore their house apart right above them. It's like what that mom in Kentucky went through in a past tornado, describing that awful fear even when she thought she was safe. Then in an Arkansas town, an elderly couple, they reportedly got confused by all the alerts. They weren't sure if the danger was really for their street, right then. They waited too long to go to a community shelter. They were found in what was left of their home. Over in Oklahoma, a young dad was trying to get his family out as a wildfire rushed towards them. He'd heard the evacuation warnings, but maybe like a lot of us might, he underestimated how fast that fire was moving, or thought he had a bit more time. His story, pieced together from his last frantic phone calls, is a brutal reminder of what happens when you misjudge a fire like that. And in Southern California, imagine the helplessness. People trapped, calling 911 for rescue, and the calls just wouldn't go through. There was one story that got a lot of attention about a family stuck in their home, fire closing in, their calls for help failing over and over because the systems were swamped. These aren't just sad stories. They show us the human cost when the system breaks down. These are real people who, for all sorts of reasons, weren't reached, didn't act, couldn't act, or what they did just wasn't enough. These stories change 42 dead from a statistic into a deeply personal tragedy. And they make us ask, not just what happened, but why did it happen to them? So, what really went wrong here? The heart of this tragedy isn't that we didn't see the danger coming. We had over 40 warnings. The real issue seems to be the disconnect between sending out an alert and people actually getting to safety. That's what we need to unpack. Are we just drowning in warnings? Warning fatigue asterisk. Think about it. How many alerts pop up on your phone or TV for things that don't end up affecting you directly? It's easy to become numb. Researchers call it warning fatigue. And get this, one study found it can be worst at the start of a dangerous season because the media is already talking about unofficial warnings, so we're kind of tired of it before the official ones even hit. If every little thunderstorm triggers an alert, do the really big ones get lost in the noise? Was it a case of crying wolf? Was the message clear? Clarity and consistency asterisk. Even if alerts go out, are they easy to understand? Are people getting the same clear message from different sources, or is it a jumbled mess? If instructions are vague or confusing, people hesitate. You have to trust the source and know exactly what to do. Did everyone even get the memo? Reach and accessibility asterisk. We have all these channels, but did the warnings actually reach everyone? What about folks in rural areas, people with disabilities, those who don't speak English fluently, or older people who aren't glued to smartphones? Some places still use opt-in systems, meaning tons of people might not even be signed up. What if the system itself breaks? Infrastructure resilience. The California wildfires showed a huge weak spot when communication lines go down. If cell towers are damaged or 911 centers are overwhelmed, warnings don't mean much. Power outages, super common in bad weather, also knock out ways to get information. The human side of things, why we don't always listen. It won't happen to me, risk perception and normalcy bias. It's human nature to think bad things happen to other people. We underestimate threats, especially if we've never experienced them directly. This normalcy bias makes people delay or ignore warnings until it's way too late. Checking with friends and neighbors, confirmation seeking. Most of us don't just blindly follow one warning. We look for confirmation, check the news, see what neighbors are doing, maybe even peek outside. This takes time, and in a fast-moving disaster, time is something you just don't have. If your neighbors aren't packing up, you might think it's not that serious, even if the official alert says otherwise. Do we trust who's telling us? Trust in authority. If people don't trust the agencies sending out warnings, maybe because of past experiences, or if they think the info is politicized, they're less likely to listen. It's not always easy to just leave, socioeconomic factors. For some, evacuating isn't simple. No car? Worried about pets or leaving everything behind? Can't afford to go? Physical limitations? These are real barriers. Disasters hit poor communities, and those already at a disadvantage the hardest. Even federal aid programs have been called out for not always helping everyone equally. Stress and believing you can act, psychological factors. Just hearing disaster warnings can be incredibly stressful. How people cope, by taking action or by denying the threat, makes a huge difference. Believing you actually can do something to protect yourself is key. Getting the message through, the last mile. Even if national agencies send timely warnings, making sure those warnings get to local communities and that individual families understand them, that's the last mile challenge. Local emergency managers have their own struggles. Not enough resources, maybe not enough training on new systems, or delays in deciding to send out very localized alerts. The handoff from a big federal forecast to a local warning that makes you act? That's where things often stumble. There's something called the Common Alerting Protocol, CAP, that tries to make messages standard across all platforms, but getting it to work perfectly everywhere is still a work in progress. Are we actually ready to act? Preparedness levels. Beyond just getting alerts, are communities, especially in high-risk areas, truly set up to respond? Do they have enough accessible public shelters? Clear, practiced evacuation routes? Support networks within the community? Often, the focus is on sending the warning, not so much on whether people can actually do anything about it. Preparedness drills often test facilities, but rarely how ready the community itself is. Those 42 deaths in spring 2025 weren't because of one single mistake. It was more like a chain reaction of problems, with technology, with how we think and act as humans, and with weaknesses in the very systems designed to protect us. Every warning that didn't lead to action was a potential life lost. What happened in spring 2025 isn't some freak event, sadly. It fits a disturbing pattern we've seen over and over again in disasters. Warnings go out, but people still suffer. It feels like we're stuck in a loop of lessons we haven't quite learned, or maybe our systems just can't keep up. Take the 2010 Haiti earthquake. Scientists had warned for years about the risk from that specific fault line. But those warnings? Largely ignored. No real emergency plans were ready for that kind of disaster. The lack of preparation was a huge reason why so many hundreds of thousands died. It was a total failure to turn scientific knowledge into action that could save lives. And even closer to what we're talking about, those Southern California wildfires we mentioned earlier, the hypothetical ones in January 2025. People died there because evacuations were delayed or didn't reach everyone, and emergency calls failed, even though there were fire warnings for days. It wasn't that they didn't know the danger was there, it was a failure in how they responded. Hurricane Katrina back in 2005 is probably the starkest example of a total system meltdown. The hurricane's path and strength were predicted, but the disaster was made so much worse by levees failing, bad evacuation plans, and a complete breakdown in communication and coordination at every level of government. The committee that investigated Katrina said that the damage to communication lines made it almost impossible to manage the situation or even know what was going on. A lot of it came down to information gaps, not enough solid info to make quick, decisive calls. It's not just natural disasters either. Think about studies on mass violence like school shootings. So often, there were clear warning signs beforehand, but they weren't acted on effectively. These are different kinds of tragedies, of course, but they point to a bigger problem we have in society with spotting credible threats and doing something about them before it's too late. Looking at these past events isn't about pointing fingers. It's about showing that we have this ongoing weakness. Our warning technology gets better. We understand natural hazards more and more, but that gap between an alert going out and people actually taking life-saving action, that's still a massive hurdle. Every disaster gives us tons of information on what went wrong, from tech failures to the complicated ways people react. The big question is, are we actually using these hard lessons to make our plans better, or are we just going to see the same mistakes happen again next time? Those 42 deaths in 2025 suggest that even with progress, we're still fundamentally vulnerable. The loss of 42 lives, especially when so many warnings went out, isn't just a sad number. It's a pretty damning statement about a system that, when it really mattered, didn't do enough. What happened in spring 2025 makes us face some hard truths about how vulnerable we are and how well our safeguards actually work. The biggest hit? Public trust. When people get alert after alert but still see or experience such awful loss, their faith in those warning systems, and in the people running them, takes a nosedive. That's dangerous. It means future warnings might be met with more doubt or people just shrugging them off, creating a terrible cycle where the risk just keeps going up. Rebuilding that trust means being open, holding people accountable, and showing real improvements. And let's be real. The threats we're facing are changing and getting worse, especially with climate change. We're seeing more extreme and unpredictable weather, more intense tornadoes, wildfires, and storms. Our old plans and systems are being pushed to their limits. What worked 10 years ago might be totally useless now. This new normal means we have to completely rethink how we look at risk, how strong our infrastructure is, and how ready our communities are. We can't just plan for yesterday's disasters. We have to get ready for what's coming. The fact that these 42 people couldn't be protected also shines a harsh light on some deep-rooted unfairness in who gets hit hardest by disasters and how well they can recover. Study after study shows that people in communities with less money, minority groups, the elderly, and those with disabilities often suffer the most. They might have fewer resources to prepare or get out, live in homes that aren't as safe, or have a harder time getting and understanding warnings. If a system doesn't protect its most vulnerable, it's failing everyone. Fixing these inequities has to be a top priority. Think about the money too. The costs are huge, and it's not just about lost lives and damaged property. Disasters wreck local economies, drain public money, and have long-term effects on a community's ability to bounce back. So, investing in better, fairer preparedness and response systems isn't just the right thing to do, it's smart economics. Preventing damage and effectively reducing risks costs a lot less than cleaning up after a catastrophe. What happened in spring 2025 is a massive wake-up call. It shows us that just sending out a warning isn't enough. A good warning system is like a chain. It starts with spotting the danger and getting the word out, but it also needs people to understand the message, believe it, see how it applies to them, and then actually be able to do something. Every link in that chain has to be strong. If one breaks, people die. The challenge now isn't just about tweaking the alert technology. It's about understanding and fixing all the human, social, and systemic issues that decide whether a warning saves a life or just becomes another tragic number. Look, digging into this isn't just about looking back at a tragedy. It's about fighting for a safer future. It's about building a culture where we don't just passively get alerts, but where we actively engage and prepare. So share this. Talk about these problems in your own towns, with your local leaders. Ask the tough questions. How ready is my community? Are our local warnings really getting to everyone? What's the plan for our most vulnerable neighbors? Getting a grip on why these breakdowns happen is the first step to making sure they don't happen again. It's not just up to the government agencies. It's up to all of us to be informed, get involved, demand better, and get ready together. The spring of 2025 left a deep scar on America, not just in the twisted metal and ruined homes, but in the awful knowledge that 42 people died even though the warnings were there. We're left with some heavy questions still hanging in the air. Who's really responsible when there's such a big gap between a warning and people getting to safety? How do we fight off warning fatigue when we're bombarded with information all the time? How can we make sure life-saving messages actually get through all the noise of human psychology, our different ways of seeing risk, and the real-world barriers people face? There's no single, easy answer. Moving forward means tackling this from a bunch of different angles. We absolutely need to invest serious money in making our communication systems stronger, so alerts get through even if the power's out or networks are jammed. We need smarter warning systems, ones that are more targeted, more personal, and give clearer, more practical advice. And we need way better public education, not just telling people what to do, but explaining why and how in ways that actually click and make them feel capable. And critically, we need to get back to basics with community-level readiness. That means beefing up local emergency management, helping neighbors create support networks, and making sure evacuation plans and shelters are truly usable for everyone. This includes tackling those systemic problems that leave some folks much more vulnerable than others. The technology to warn people exists, and it's always getting better. But tech alone isn't the magic bullet. The failures in spring 2025 were deeply human failures, tied to how systems are set up, how we take in information, and whether our communities are supported when they need it most. As climate change keeps making extreme weather more frequent and more intense, the stakes are only going to get higher. We have to learn from this catastrophe. These lessons can't just be written down in reports. They need to be built into our policies, our daily practices, and how we all think about preparedness. The memory of those 42 lives and all the others turned upside down has to drive us to build a country where warnings aren't just heard, but acted on, where every alert leads to actions that save lives. Because the next warning is always coming. Whether we're truly ready for it, that's up to us.